Varan did not know what was the relationship between his city lord and Baum, but from Baum's reaction, it became clear to him that they weren't all that close. He started to worry that Baum might just let him die because Han Shu's strength was too mighty. Varan's desperate words had pushed Baum off the fence. He had finally decided. As the city lord of Ethereal City, he must fight to maintain his prestige. If you must kill Varan, you can wait until he left Ethereal City. Baum's gaze at Han Shuo slowly turned more intense as he said, "As long as he is in Ethereal City, I am going to stop you. Rose, kill that guy for me. I will hold back this old man," instructed Han Shuo calmly after getting an answer from Baum. He did not want to give Varan any chance of escaping. Upon finishing those words, the Demon Slayer edge appeared from his palm while the 17 flying swords whooshed out. Han Shuo, with the sword in his hand and the 17 flying swords, shot towards Baum ferociously. Han Shuo also deployed the banner of hallucination with his left hand to interfere with Baum's vision and to stop Varan from escaping. After having worked with Han Shuo for centuries and having spent lots of time sparring with him, Rose knew his attack methods well. As soon as Han Shuo took action, Rose flew out with rapport and filled her long hair darkness divine energy. Under the guise of the banner of hallucination, her long hair slithered to right beside the escaping Varan. Yet again, absolute darkness abruptly enveloped Varan and caught him by surprise. As the 17 flying swords started slicing him, Baum felt a substantial increase in pressure. He was forced to rewrite the Edict of Space using the wooden staff in his hand. The space around him started distorting as he seemed to have fallen into a space-time discontinuum. Dazzling radiance streaked past him as fissures torn and fused across space-time. The flying swords were clearly shooting at Baum, but somehow, a distortion in space-time would appear, and the swords would find themselves on the edge of crossing into another dimension. If it wasn't for the fact that Han Shuo's consciousness was tightly connected with his flying swords, and that he was masterful in maneuvering them. If Han Shuo had not withdrawn them quickly enough, the flying swords would have been consumed by the space-time discontinuum, and Han Shuo would have lost all the swords. I dang, a space edict cultivator is indeed troublesome to deal with. I thought Han Shuo. Chapter 812, Destroying the Space Barrier GDK 812. Destroying the space barrier, there were 8 elemental energies, namely light, darkness, earth, fire, wind, water, lightning, death, and 4 addictal forces: space, destiny, life, destruction. A great majority of Elysians cultivated in those 12 fundamental forces. Addictal forces were considered more mysterious than elemental energies, while the edicts of space and destiny were the most abstruse of addictal forces. For all his life, Han Shuo had rarely ever fought cultivators of those 2 addictal energies. He wasn't particularly familiar with their attack methods. It was when fighting Baum that Han Shuo finally discovered that fighting a cultivator of space edict would be a great pain in the arse. The space around Baum would constantly twist and distort. Although he appeared to be standing right before Han Shuo couldn't be sure if it was an illusion, as he felt as though Baum was in another material plane. This made attacking Baum very difficult, as Han Shuo could not lock onto his target. Han Shuo's flying swords would often accidentally fall into the fissures in spacetime created by Baum. If Han Shuo had not reacted quickly enough, and his connection to his flying swords not strong enough, he would have lost all the 17 flying swords forever in the first few seconds of the battle. The distorted spacetime had also greatly obstructed the sensing power of his consciousness. In normal circumstances, as long as Han Shuo's consciousness had locked onto a person, no matter where or how the person conceals his aura, the person will not be able to escape from Han Shuo's senses. But Baum was an exception. Even if Han Shuo's consciousness managed to lock onto Baum, the constantly twisting and distorting spacetime would quickly make Han Shuo lose track of Baum. And sometimes, although Han Shuo saw Baum standing right in front of him, his consciousness could not detect his presence. It was as though the person standing in front of him was just an illusion. As Han Shuo was unable to lock onto Baum, the firepower of the 17 flying swords were significantly diminished. The layers of space edict barriers Baum deployed also posed great impedance to the flying swords, which means Han Shuo had to exhaust more demonic yuan than usual, even though he couldn't inflict Baum any real harm. It was a very frustrating situation for Han Shuo. Although he was filled with a tremendous amount of power, he could neither put it to use nor convert them into menacing attacks that would land on Baum. The energy of Cauldron Spirit was wildly whirling in Han Shuo's body, while his consciousness was spread out into countless strands, attempting to locate Baum. The whooshing 17 flying swords were obstructed by the spacetime fissures, and they were prevented from orbiting in their correct trajectories. Han Shuo and his flying swords seemed to have lost themselves in the boundlessly vast space. Han Shuo was feeling frustrated as hell, but City Lord Baum, the ethereal city, wasn't feeling any better. The 17 swords were wreaking havoc in the distorted spacetime he deployed. Everywhere it whooshed, it would spread its intense corrosive power and chilling aura. Baum had no choice but to use his own divine energy to keep the Edict of Space under his control. He forcibly ripped more fissures in spacetime to defend himself against the 17 flying swords. Normally speaking, after Baum deployed a distorted spacetime and used his divine energy to tear fissures in spacetime, anything that fell into the fissures would forever be lost in the edge of the boundless universe. Returning to Elysium or any material plane will be impossible. However, the 17 flying swords were not following this natural law. Every time that a flying sword fell into a spacetime fissure, it would miraculously manage to find its way back. This was inconceivable to Baum. Even a mighty god that fell into the spacetime fissure wouldn't be able to escape from it easily, and a lifeless divine weapon will forever be gone. However, somehow, the 17 flying swords controlled by Han Shuo could do it again and again. Every time the flying swords entered a spacetime fissure, they would rapidly turn around, escape the fissure, and continue to shoot at Baum no less ferociously. It forced Baum to keep on distorting and tearing spacetime, using his divine energy to prevent the flying swords from getting closer. He wasn't having an easier time than Han Shuo. What made Baum even more spooked was that it seemed as though Han Shuo could detect his location in the complex and confusing spacetime discontinuum area Baum formed. The 17 flying swords would always manage to find him somehow. It forced Baum to travel back and forth through the cracks in spacetime to evade the attacks. Baum had linked 10-dimensional tunnels in this spacetime discontinuum created, allowing him to travel to various corners of the universe within a short time. Although he appeared to still be standing in the same place, he had, in fact, traveled to places unfathomably far away from Elysium through the spacetime fissures. He could have traveled across different material planes countless light years away before returning to Elysium while appearing stationary. And yet, somehow, Han Shuo could still lock onto him almost immediately. This was simply inconceivable to Baum. Baum was becoming more and more afraid of Han Shuo. While Han Shuo and Baum were causing each other immense headaches, Rose, following Han Shuo's order, had gone off to finish Varan. The two had had a battle earlier, and it was clear to Varan that Rose's strength was greater than his. When he saw that Han Shuo wasn't defeated by Baum in an instant, he immediately turned on his heels and tried to escape. But what a pity, Rose just wouldn't give him the chance. She started attacking Varan the instant Han Shuo attacked Baum. Varan was absent-minded for just a fraction of a second, but by the time he came to his senses, Rose had already got to him. He was again trapped in absolute darkness before he could react. Rose's ferocious attacks also started bombarding him. Varan could not feel more regretful at this time. He thought, why didn't I run just then instead of staying and watch? Now I'm fucked. This terrifying bitch has got me again. Varan was no match against Rose. And this time around, Rose used her full strength against Varan. She even allowed herself to suffer light injuries in exchange for causing Varan severe injuries. With that, the situation turned even grimmer for Varan. He received plenty of new wounds all over his body in no time. After fighting Baum for what seemed to be ages, Han Shuo, who still could not effectively destruct Baum's defenses, was feeling distressed and thwarted. Even though he had fought countless formidable experts, never before had Han Shuo feel this way, to be filled with power but unable to use it. Even fighting Hofs, who was also a late-stage high god, Han Shuo could fight unrestrainedly and use Cauldron Spirit's energy to his advantage. Against this cultivator of Space Edict, however, Han Shuo could not form the ceaseless pain sword formation using his 17 flying swords all throughout the fight. If he loses focus for even the slightest time, he would immediately lose track of Baum, and his presence will no longer be detectable. This made Han Shuo feel very helpless and annoyed. When Han Shuo was so annoyed that he was about to start cursing, he received a message from Cauldron Spirit. "Master, let me help you. You can destroy this annoying space-time barrier." He has merged 10 small dimensional tunnels in that area. Through the dimensional tunnels, he could repeatedly travel to locations light years away from Elysium and return in no time. That's why your consciousness would suddenly lose track of him. Cauldron Spirit continued to explain, "Master, don't you forget that the inside of the cauldron is made of an independent dimension. I have even made many smaller dimensions for my demon generals in it. My understanding of the Edict of Space cannot be poorer than his. Also, back then, when the exalted Demon Lord created a tunnel between the two universes, he had relied upon my understanding of spacetime. Breaking this spacetime barrier will be no problem." "All right then, you go ahead and try," hastily transmitted the elated Han Shuo. "I need to take back the energy from you, or I might not have sufficient energy to do it," explained Cauldron Spirit before Han Shuo immediately felt the energy in his body rapidly returning to Cauldron Spirit. Just as Han Shuo felt power draining away from his body, Cauldron Spirit abruptly flew out from Han Shuo's body and turned into a dark radiance that shot straight for the space edict barrier made by Baum. In all of a sudden, hundreds of bright dark shadows shot out from the cauldron of Myriad Demon and spread in every direction towards the spacetime barrier. Even the 17 flying swords were maneuvered by Cauldron Spirit. They were whooshing towards 17 different directions. Baum, who was feeling just as horrible as Han Shuo, immediately felt that an intense fluctuation traveling across the spacetime discontinuum he created. The waves miraculously concentrated at the dimensional tunnels he made using his divine energy and induced resonances at the weak points of his dimensional tunnels. Baum, who was in the middle of traversing through one of those tunnels, was greatly alarmed. He knew that only a cultivator of Space Edict with similar or greater strength than his could locate the weak points of his dimensional tunnels. However, Han Shuo clearly did not cultivate in the Edict of Space. How is this even possible? I thought the appalled Baum. It was at this point that Baum really started to panic. A person who could precisely locate the weak points of his dimensional tunnels could also easily do the same thing if he were to attempt escaping by ripping apart spacetime. In other words, Baum could be stopped from escaping. That is to say, if Han Shuo were to gain the upper hand in this battle, Baum might not end up with just slight injuries, he could lose his life. Baum started to regret it. He regretted landing himself in such a terrible situation for such a minor matter. Shortly after, Baum detected that all the weak points of his dimensional tunnels were struck by a burst of energy. Before he came to his senses, a violent rumble sounded from every direction. His dimensional tunnels were rapidly collapsing. Baum was panic-stricken, and he hastily evacuated from the dimensional tunnel, lest he is pulled to the edge of the universe. After all, he wasn't the overgod of space who could travel to any dimension with just a thought. Just as his spacetime discontinuum completely crumbled, a miserable shriek fell into Baum's ears. In a flurry, Baum lowered his head to look. He saw that Varan has been slain. Seeing the slaughtered Varan collapse on the ground lifelessly, Baum knew that all his struggles had been in vain. However, he secretly felt glad about Varan's demise, because Han Shuo will no longer have a reason to continue fighting him. Chapter 813, Foes to Friends GDK 813. Foes to Friends. The instant that the Space Edict barrier shattered, Han Shuo's consciousness detected Baum clearly and locked onto him. However, as the cauldron of Myriad Demon was outside his body, Han Shuo could not borrow Cauldron Spirit's energy, and therefore he did not immediately strike Baum. It was at this time that Han Shuo heard the last dying shriek of Varan's. He stared blankly for a moment and started to consider if he should continue to fight Baum. Han Shuo felt no grudges or grievances towards Baum, and there was no reason to fight him to death. Besides, Han Shuo felt some apprehension towards this expert. Even though the Space Edict barrier had been destroyed, Han Shuo still did not have full certainty of killing Baum. It was at this moment that the cauldron had whooshed back into Han Shuo's body. Cauldron's spirit then transmitted, "Master, the space-time barrier has been removed. This guy possessed a decent strength. He might have other tricks up his sleeves. Do you still want to attack him?" After killing Varan, Rose returned to stand beside Han Shuo and stared cautiously at Baum. If Han Shuo gave her the command, she would instantly charge forward and attack Baum. "Varan is dead. I think there is no longer a cause for us to keep on fighting each other, don't we?" Out of Han Shuo's expectation, while he was still on the fence, Baum took initiative in throwing an olive branch. His attitude was much more polite than before. There was even a forced, awkward smile on Baum's face. It was apparent that this person called Baum was poor at feigning civility. It looked as though someone was pulling on his face muscles to make that awkward fake smile. Han Shuo continued to stare at Baum without speaking for a moment. His eyes were glittering with indecision. Baum's heart jolted. He thought, don't tell me that this guy is going to fight me to the death. The moment that the space-time barrier was destroyed, Baum knew that Han Shuo will be able to have a real battle with him. He also knew that Han Shuo must have some other deadly tricks up his sleeves. Baum was very wary of Han Shuo. He did not want to become Han Shuo's mortal enemy for Varan. While Baum let his imagination ran wild, he secretly took certain defensive precautions, fearing that Han Shuo might launch a sudden attack. "You are right. There are no grievances between us. There's no point in making such a big fuss over that minor little character." While Baum's mind was worried and anxious, Han Shuo suddenly put on a faint smile and declared his stance. He withdrew the 17 flying swords floating in midair, indicating that he will not continue to fight. Han Shuo was an ethereal city, and he still needed to wait for his other 5 children in the city. If Han Shuo was to continue to fight Baum, the city lord of Ethereal City, even if Han Shuo won the fight, he most likely won't be able to stay in Ethereal City any longer. In addition, it was very unlikely for Han Shuo to win without suffering any injuries. If the two were to continue fighting, the most likely outcome would be grave injuries to both sides. And if Han Shuo were to suffer injuries at this time, his plan of visiting the Fringe will have to be postponed indefinitely. That will be inconsistent with Han Shuo's original intention. Therefore, Han Shuo did not recklessly attack. Once Baum saw Han Shuo withdrew his miraculous weapons, he heaved a sigh of relief in his mind and dismantled his remaining defenses as well. He carefully looked at Han Shuo up and down a few times before he explained, "I had the opportunity of meeting the Akaji City Lord once, and we could be considered acquaintances. Indeed, my intention was to protect Varan. However, I did not expect that you would have such strength. My friendship with the Akaji City Lord isn't deep enough for me to risk my life. With Varan now dead, well, I guess I will just let it pass." And now he's being honest, I thought Han Shuo. Although Han Shuo did not have a good impression of Baum, he did not hold any animosity either. Han Shuo calmly nodded and cordially said, "Yes, there may have been some misunderstandings between us. I hope that your lordship will not take offense." Suddenly, a company of divine guards arrived from the distance. Among them were 3 high gods, 2 at early stage and 1 at mid-stage. After the divine guards arrived, mid-stage high god that led the company hastily asked, "City Lord, what happened here?" The battle between Han Shuo and Baum had created intense shockwaves. Experts who had reached certain realms would be able to tell that a fight was happening nearby just from the unusual space-time fluctuations. The company of divine guards happened to be patrolling the area, and they rushed to the scene to see what was wrong. Upon arrival, they surrounded Han Shuo, Rose, and Earth Elite Zombie. Every one of them was wearing grave and unfriendly faces. They automatically assumed the trio as enemies trying to cause disorder in Ethereal City. If Baum gave the command, they would immediately charge forward and attack the 3. The situation that had just started to ease up suddenly reverted to high tension. With demon generals dispersed all around, Han Shuo knew that the company of divine guards will be there beforehand. He also knew that with their strengths, he could easily escape with Rose and Earth Elite Zombie, and therefore Han Shuo was not worried about the divine guards. He looked at Baum calmly in a faint smile as though waiting for him to respond. Baum, who just had a great battle with Han Shuo, knew better than anyone of just how terrifying Han Shuo is. When the company of divine guards showed up at such an inappropriate time and even surrounded the three as though they were enemies, Baum panicked a little and hastily said, "Do not attack. I only had a small misunderstanding with this friend here. We have resolved the misunderstanding." The divine guards seemed puzzled when they heard Baum's words. They had all sensed intense space-time fluctuation coming from this place. And being veterans, they could tell from the space-time fluctuations that Baum had attacked with all his strength. Besides, Varan, a guest who had been staying in City Lord's mansion, was still lying lifelessly on the ground for all to see. It seemed very illogical that Baum would say that everything had just been a misunderstanding. After hearing Baum asking the divine guards to be at ease, Han Xiu realized that Baum wasn't planning on fighting him any longer. Han Xiu put on a faint smile and said, "City Lord Baum, if there's nothing else, are we allowed to leave now?" Of course," said Baum while he repeatedly nodded his head. Then, as though something struck him, he cried, "Wait!" Han Xiu put on a solemn face and slightly bunched his brows before he turned back to Baum. "Please don't misunderstand, I just want to ask you a question." Baum hastily explained when Han Xiu seemed displeased, "Can I know who are you? An expert as young and formidable as you cannot be an obscure character in any dominion. I just want to know the identity of the person who had sparred with me. Can I have that honor?" Han Xiu couldn't help himself but laugh. He answered, "Haha, I'm called Brian. I hail from the City of Shadows, the Darkness Dominion." "Brian, Brian," Baum mumbled to himself while scratching his head as though trying to recall something. After a long while, Baum let out a cry in surprise and asked, "Are you the master of the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy?" This time it was Han Xiu's turn to be shocked. The City of Shadows was very far away from Ethereal City. Han Xiu did not expect that the City Lord of Ethereal City would know him. Yes, I'm the master of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy," admitted Han Xiu. He saw no point in concealing that fact. The Ethereal City divine guards around him were all astonished to hear Han Xiu's admission. It seemed that they had all heard of Han Xiu's name. Their gaze towards Han Xiu became much more different. It was as though they were excited about something. "I really did not expect the rumors to be true. Youth indeed breeds heroism." Baum was greatly astonished. He had never believed the rumors that came from the City of Shadows of the Darkness Dominion. He thought that the hearsays had exaggerated Han Xiu's strength. But after the battle, Baum realized that the rumors were definitely erroneous. They had not exaggerated Han Xiu's strength, but underrated his strength. The startled Baum quickly racked his brain before he suddenly proposed, "Brian, will you be interested in opening a branch of your Celestial Pearl Pharmacy in Ethereal City? If you are willing, we can discuss this in detail. There have been a lot of people from the Darkness Dominion that highly praised your expertise in refining medicine. I believe that no matter in which city, as long as there are gods, your medicines would be sold out in no time." The Ethereal City divine guards who glared ferociously at Han Xiu just a moment ago started looking at Han Xiu with eyes glinting with fervent lights while wearing expressions of astonishment. They had heard too much about the miraculousness of Han Xiu's medicines from gods that came from the Darkness Dominion. But unfortunately for them, the City of Shadows was millions of miles from Ethereal City. Even if they wanted to purchase Han Xiu's medicines, it was not feasible for most of them to spend so much time traversing multiple dominions just to get to the City of Shadows. In addition, it was impossible for gods that cultivated in the energy of life, light, and water to step into the death, darkness, and destruction dominions. No matter how many crystal coins they may have, there was no way they could purchase Han Xiu's medicines. Meanwhile, those who got their hands on Han Xiu's medicine would treat it like treasures and would never resell it. Therefore, although many had heard of the miraculousness of his medicines, only a very small portion of those people could obtain them. How could the divine guards not be excited after learning that the person standing in front of them was the master of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy? Han Xiu stared blankly for a moment. He did not expect that Baum, who had a fight with him just a moment ago, would take initiative and invite him to set up a Celestial Pearl branch in Ethereal City. The proposal caught him by surprise. After he carefully thought about it for a while, Han Xiu felt that Baum's proposal was all but harmful to him. If he were to open a branch of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy in Ethereal City, not only that he could make even more crystal coins, but he could possibly utilize the unique situation of Ethereal City to spread the influence of Celestial Pearl to every dominion there was on Elysium. The temptation was too much to be refused. Han Shuo hesitated for only a short moment before he nodded and agreed, "Sure, definitely. I thank City Lord in advance." "You're welcome. My ethereal city is greatly honored to have the privilege." Baum promptly replied with polite words. He seemed rather pleasantly surprised. "If you have nothing at hand, shall we head somewhere else to discuss this? I will make sure to select a suitable location for your pharmacy, and if you need it, I can also help you with the hiring of manpower. The Space Dominion is very different from the Death, Destruction, and Darkness Dominions. We are much freer in economy and movement. The environment we have is much more suitable for doing business." "Very well, let's discuss it," Han Shu gladly agreed. He did not expect that picking up a fight would land him with such a great profit. Chapter 814, VIP Treatment, GDK 814. VIP Treatment, Ethereal City, the City Lord's Manor House. Baum welcomed Han Shu's arrival with the most pompous ceremony and was treating him as a distinguished guest. Most of the people in the mansion were surprised and confused. They did not know why their city lord would treat a youngster with such great respect. But after they learned of Han Shuo's identity, they too started looking at Han Shuo with great excitement. It appeared that Han Shuo's customers from the City of Shadows had been eagerly promoting the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy everywhere, even in distant lands. Although Baum was the city lord of Ethereal City and a very mighty expert, he did not establish any family clan of his own. It was a very different situation from the City of Shadows, where ancient family clans wielded great political powers. Baum did not even have a relative living with him. His manor house appeared simple and crude, and yet it carried a solemn atmosphere. It was apparent that the Divine Guards loved and respected their city lord very much. Although he did not have a family clan, he had several divine armies under his command, allowing him to firmly secure Ethereal City under his rule. Han Shuo and Baum decided on the location for the new Celestial Pearl Pharmacy branch shortly after entering the manor house. Baum straightforwardly seated a shop lot in the most bustling region in Ethereal City and even offered to help Han Shuo with everything else. Han Shuo found it somewhat difficult to adapt to Baum's abrupt change in attitude. After hearing Baum's plans, Han Shuo asked, "Many thanks for your generosity, City Lord. I will give you 30% of all the profits generated from this branch. Is that all right with you?" Back then, Bolton, Bowen, and Li Wei traveled thousands of miles to the City of Shadows and asked Han Shuo to set up branches of Celestial Pearl in the dominions of death and destruction where they came from. They proposed the collaboration with the intention of getting rich together. From how Han Shu sees it, Baum must also be having similar thoughts in being so helpful and enthusiastic. But out of Han Shuo's expectation, Baum immediately shook his head when he heard Han Shuo's generous proposal. He replied, "No, you don't need to do that. You just need to follow the rules of the Ethereal City and pay 10% in taxes to the city. Such are the customs of Ethereal City. I personally will not have any crystal coins from you." Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment and was rather confused. The shop lot Baum ceded to him was a sizable area in a pricey estate. Baum was even willing to help Han Shuo with recruiting and settle all the mirroring procedures. Han Shuo basically needed to do nothing but refine medicines. He found it very baffling that Baum did not want any financial compensation for helping him with all those works. While Han Shuo stared at him with astonished gazes, Baum explained, "Don't be surprised. I have told you just then that the space and destiny dominions are unlike any other dominions. Not only that we allow any person to live here, we administrators are here only to maintain the most basic order in the city. This place is basically as free as it gets. In normal circumstances, we will not interfere with your business. I just need 10% of the profits generated by the businesses to maintain the Divine Guard armies of the city." Han Shuo was even more amazed when he realized that Baum was not joking. He also started to like Ethereal City much more. Seeing that Baum had no intention of taking part of his profits, Han Shuo didn't insist on giving his money away. He put on a faint smile, nodded, and said, "The Ethereal City is truly a wonderful place. Haha, I'm liking this city already." The presence of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy will benefit the gods of Ethereal City. That is why I'm doing everything I can to help you with opening a branch here. Baum continued, I will settle everything with your shop within 5 days. You may write a statement for recruiting shop assistants and pharmacists. I will have the Divine Guards post the announcement. Ethereal City is filled with all sorts of talents, and there is no lack of excellent pharmacists. In this city, you can find anything that you want. That's great. Han Shuo was glad. He did not expect to receive such treatment from Baum even though they fought. Han Shuo got rather curious about this city lord that has no family clan. If you have no lodging yet, please stay in my manor house. I have many empty rooms and gymnasiums. You may stay here for as long as you like, as long as you do not mind that the place is rather crude, invited Baum. Well, I shall trouble you then, Han Shuo bluntly and smilingly agreed. Han Shuo and Baum did not continue to exchange pleasantries. Baum provided Han Shuo, Rose, and Earth Elite Zombie with a rather quiet, 7-story tall building. The ground floor was a gymnasium, and the rest of the building were rooms, living spaces, and some commonly found living facilities. Rose, who was a clean freak, immediately went to take a bath. Han Shuo and Earth Elite Zombie, meanwhile, went to a spacious lounge on the 3rd floor. Earth Elite Zombie started narrating what he experienced in the past 50 years, including his encounter with Varan. 50 years ago, after leaving Han Shuo, Earth Elite Zombie headed straight for the Earth Dominion. As the Earth Dominion had the most cultivators of the energy of Earth on Elysium, it was the most abundant with knowledge and divine weapons of that energy. After arriving in the Earth Dominion, Earth Elite Zombie began attempting to communicate and interact with people. It was after he left Han Shuo and tried to survive in this world that Earth Elite Zombie realized just how wonderful, treacherous, and complicated the world really was. He came into contact with all sorts of characters. With that, Earth Elite Zombie started to grow up rapidly. He had met a fair share of kind-hearted people, devious people, and all those in between. In those few decades, Earth Elite Zombie experienced many friendships and betrayals. He had found himself in dire straits multiple times, but in the end, he would always manage to survive by using his capability and understanding of the Earth energy. Through this process, Earth Elite Zombie rapidly increased in strength. Earth Elite Zombie was born from the place of extreme Earth and made of the Yuan energy of Earth. Because of that, he can grasp and understand profound concepts about the energy of Earth faster and better than anyone. Having repeatedly faced and diffused life-threatening situations, Earth Elite Zombie repeatedly made breakthroughs and rose in strength at an astonishing rate, attaining mid-stage midgodhood in the short time of a few decades. Earth Elite Zombie quickly became a famous character in the Earth Dominion for his ability to freely and stealthily roam underground. After that, he went through a series of ordeals and incidents, offending several young broods of large family clans in Akaji City. Having grown bolder and more audacious than ever, by using the special talent he had, Earth Elite Zombie recklessly murdered those younglings. His deeds were exposed in no time. The bigwigs of Akaji City who lost their sons were infuriated, and they sent men to hunt Earth Elite Zombie all around the city. Earth Elite Zombie calculated that it was near the time of his appointment with Han Shuo, and so he started traveling towards Ethereal City. During his journey, he occasionally surfaced from underground and was spotted by people. Therefore, Varan managed to pursue him all the way to Ethereal City. In those short few decades, Earth Elite Zombie experienced and encountered an untold number of trials and tribulations, enabling him to grow up rapidly. No matter in terms of intelligence or social skills, Earth Elite Zombie had become much more mature than before. After hearing a detailed recount of his experience, Han Shu realized that Earth Elite Zombie had truly turned into a high-intelligence lifeform. He was no longer that unsophisticated and naive zombie that only knows to carry out his order like a robot. I did not expect that you would experience and learn so much after leaving me. It seems that your decision back then was the right choice, lamented Han Shuo. Back then, the elite zombies and little skeleton were all fully reliant on him and only does things as he commanded. The life forms they met in the netherworld were all of low intelligence, and therefore their growth was slow. But after arriving on Elysium, all those they met were sinister, scheming, and powerful characters. In such an environment, they could either grow or die. Yes, this world is wonderful and much more interesting than the netherworld. Everyone here is strong and mighty. Some were even crafty. It is only natural that I would grow after living with these people. Hee, father, you seem to have become much stronger than before. So much so that you managed to tame that woman, said Earth Elite Zombie smilingly in his eternally naive and innocent look. You and your brothers are all growing strong. I mustn't stop improving either. Otherwise, someday in the future, I might become a burden to you little fellas. Hanshu's heart was at peace and he felt contented. Talking to Earth Elite Zombie was like talking to an old friend. It made Hanshu felt very comfortable. The two chatted and chatted about the past without realizing how quickly time was passing. Midnight came without them knowing. It was at this time that Rose had finally done bathing. She had changed to a dark purple robe. Her long, silvery white hair, still slightly damp, was uncovered and fully revealed while a faint fragrance emanated from her body. After casually sitting down beside Hanshu, she softly reminded, "You have promised that soul in the Holy Grail to talk to him after arriving in Ethereal City." Hanshu raised his eyebrows and opened his eyes wide, laughed, and replied, "Thanks, luckily you reminded me of it. Otherwise, it's gonna take me a while before I would remember him." Hanshu had been worrying about the safety of his elite zombies and started searching for them as soon as he entered the city. After finding Earth Elite Zombie, killing Varan and fighting Baum, Hanshu almost forgot about McKinley. Hanshu took out the Holy Grail and started communicating with McKinley's divine soul. "I have arrived at Ethereal City. What can I do for you next?" "Here, I'm finally here." McKinley was very excited. After taking a while to calm down, he said to Hanshu, "Look for a person called Baum. If he is still in Ethereal City, it shouldn't be hard for you to find him. He was my best friend long ago. He should also be at late-stage High God realm." "Baum?" Hanshu immediately replied, "Haha, so the person turns out to be City Lord of Ethereal City. Haha, what a coincidence, I'm inside Baum's manor house right now." "What? He became the City Lord?" McKinley was very astonished. "That's right. The current City Lord of Ethereal City is Baum. He possessed late-stage High God strength and cultivates in the Edict of Space. That's the guy, right?" "Yes, fuck yes he is. It definitely is him. That goddamned son of a bitch, it must be him who betrayed me. That's how he takes that seat. The City Lord of Ethereal City should have been me?" Out of Hanshu's expectation, McKinley's divine soul turned furious after hearing the news. Chapter 815, Stirring Up Troubles GDK 815. Stirring Up Troubles. Hanshu learned of the full story from McKinley. Back then, the City Lord of Ethereal City was someone else. After reaching a certain realm, cultivators of the Edict of Space need to constantly wander all around the universe to sense the energy of space. The City Lord of Ethereal City at that time also possessed late-stage High God strength. As to pursue greater strength, he had no choice but to leave Elysium and travel to various material planes to increase his divine energy. But before he left the Ethereal City, he must elect his successor. McKinley and Baum were one of those candidates. But of all the candidates, McKinley was the closest to the original City Lord, and therefore, he had the highest chance of becoming the next City Lord of Ethereal City. However, it was at that time that McKinley became enemies with one of the three keepers of the light, Jayal. McKinley had no choice but to hide for some time. He told Baum, his former best friend, where he was hiding. And somehow, soon after he went into hiding, Jayal managed to find him. Although Jayal's strength was greater than McKinley's, as a cultivator of the Edict of Space, McKinley should have been able to tear apart spacetime and easily escape in one piece. However, while escaping, the spacetime tunnel McKinley constructed was destroyed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been captured by Jayal and had his divine soul separated from his divine body. The person who had destroyed his spacetime tunnel must have also cultivated in the Edict of Space and possessed similar strengths. As McKinley had told just one person where he was hiding, it didn't take McKinley much thinking to figure out who had betrayed him. It was only with him gone that Baum could become the new City Lord of Ethereal City. Then, why are you still looking for him? Hanshu was puzzled after hearing the whole story from McKinley. "I have no way of finding my body without him." Back then, it was him who sold me out, so he must know where Jael is hiding my body. I don't have much of a choice, you see, replied McKinley. If Baum finds out that you are in this grail, he definitely will destroy your soul to prevent any potential troubles. Aren't you killing yourself by looking for him? Asked the confused Han Shuo. Baum wouldn't dare kill me because there is a divine brand bestowed by the Overgod in my soul. If my soul is destroyed, the Overgod of space will sense it, even from the edge of the universe. Then, with his ability to reverse time, he will be able to find out my murderer. I have been a tireless and faithful servant of the Lord, and his lordship will investigate my death. This is why Jael had only sealed me in here instead of killing me. With things having developed to this stage, McKinley did not conceal any more facts, but truthfully explained everything to Han Shuo. The only reason that I couldn't make up my mind is that I'm afraid Baum will seal the grail shut and send me to a distant low-level material plane again, continued McKinley. Han Shuo was somewhat astonished by McKinley's words. He did not expect that McKinley's soul would have a brand left by the Overgod of space. It appeared that back then, McKinley must have been a trusted aide of the Overgod. After having lived on Elysium for so long, Han Shuo naturally caught some hearsays about the Overgods. After leaving a brand in their follower's soul, an Overgod could sense the position of their follower through some unique methods. They could also perceive the death of said follower. The Overgod of space, being the lord of the space quintessence, should have even greater sensing power in this aspect. Han Shuo also knew that only the most pious followers and those most highly regarded by their Overgods could receive a divine brand because the brand was a part of the Overgod. Applying a brand would also consume some of the Overgod's divine energy. Those bestowed with a divine brand from their Overgod would make faster progress in their cultivation compared to an average person. ISO McKinley was a real influential character in the Space Dominion. I thought the rather surprised Han Shuo. After thinking for a while, Han Shuo replied, "If I'm Baum, I definitely won't help you find your body and make myself a huge trouble. But what are you planning exactly?" "I have thought of some conditions. I'm going to make him an offer that is hopefully too tempting for him to refuse." McKinley was angry but helpless. He continued, "I don't have full confidence in the plan either. But given the circumstances, I really have no better option but to try. I had enough of living in this grail. I can't stand being trapped in here any longer. I think you better stay in the grail just for a little longer. I will figure out something for you. After all, I will be around Ethereal City and staying with Baum for a while. I might come out a way to make Baum talk." Han Shuo replied to McKinley after he spent some time thinking with his brows bunched. What could you possibly do about it?" transmitted McKinley before he went silent for a moment. Then, as though he recalled something, he asked, "Right, how did you end up in Baum's manor house? How did you know him? Logically speaking, you shouldn't have come into contact with a character at the level of Baum, right?" Han Shuo smirked and replied, "I had a fight with Baum, and after that, he made me his honored guest." You what?" The transmission from McKinley was disjointed, a telltale sign that he was very astonished. After taking a while to calm himself down, McKinley hastily asked, "How could you possibly fight Baum with what strength you have? Brian, you are joking with me, aren't you?" It was not surprising that McKinley would be so astounded. Back then, when they first met on the Profound Continent, McKinley had indirectly fought with Han Shuo and knew his strength. As a cultivator of the Edict of Space, McKinley remained sensitive to the passing of time even when he was trapped in the Holy Grail. He knew that not even a century had passed since their first encounter. 100 years may be a long time for an average human being. But for high gods like McKinley, who was almost ageless, it wasn't all that long. In all his life, McKinley had never heard of any being who had ascended from low godhood to high godhood in less than 100 years. To him, such a rate of progress was simply unimaginable. "I really fought Baum. The results? You can say that we are evenly matched." Hearing that the message coming from McKinley was fragmented, Han Shuo dared not drop any more bombshells and therefore did not mention that Baum had initiated peace talking out of fear. After keeping silent for a long while, McKinley again asked, "Brian, are you really not joking?" "Not joking at all." Han Shuo then started giving McKinley a simplified depiction of his fight against Baum. He made sure to mention the unique features of Baum's space edict shields and barriers. And again, McKinley stayed silent for a long while. When he was transmitting again, his tone turned much more excited. I believe you. If you have not fought Baum, there is no way you could describe his spacetime barriers so accurately. But how? How did you turn so strong? Gosh, this is unbelievable. After talking incoherently for a while, McKinley said, Brian, it seems that my greatest chance of regaining freedom is through you. Please, if you can locate my body, you will have my eternal gratitude. All right, I will try. But for now, you should just stay in the Grail with your mind at ease. Han Shuo knew that McKinley needed time to calm down from the bombshell he just dropped, and so he took the initiative to cut off communication. Although Han Shuo learned of the conflict between McKinley and Baum, it doesn't affect the current cooperation he had with Baum. Han Shuo was a man who knows when to take freebies and when not to. At the same time, Han Shuo started weighing the risk of locating McKinley's body and helping him overthrow Baum against the potential rewards. With one thought, a high-level demon general flew out from his body. Han Shuo decided to keep Baum under his surveillance for some time before doing anything. Han Shuo had become vigilant of Baum after hearing McKinley's story and thought of Baum to be a treacherous wolf in sheep's clothing. He also started suspecting that Baum must be having some other intentions behind helping him establish his business in the city and offering him such great treatment. 5 days went by like the blink of an eye. The demon general that had been constantly surveilling Baum from a safe distance did not discover any unusual activity. For all 5 days, Baum had been busy helping Han Shuo with his new celestial pearl branch. Not only that he had ordered men to clean the shop thoroughly, he published an announcement stating that Celestial Pearl Pharmacy will set up a branch in Ethereal City, and that those who were interested to work as shop assistants and pharmacists may look for Han Shuo at the City Lord's Manor House. Although it appeared as though Baum was sincerely helping Han Shuo remained wary of Baum. In fact, the more helpful and charitable Baum was, the more that Han Shuo felt something was fishy. He made sure that Baum was always under the surveillance of his demon general. The spirit demon made using High God Soul was extraordinary in their stealth capabilities. Having had a spar with Baum, Han Shuo knew just how formidable his strength was. The demon general would always be at a safe distance of more than several hundred meters away. And when Baum steps into regions with space edict boundaries, the demon general would stay even further away, lest Baum discover it. Ethereal City was indeed filled with talents. Soon after Baum sent out the announcement, a large crowd showed up at the City Lord's Manor House. It surprised Han Shuo just how many people turned up, and that many of them were true masters of their field. Han Shuo personally selected the workers for his new branch, and he interviewed them in the manor house. Han Shuo's consciousness and observation skills were so mighty and outstanding that average low gods and mid gods cannot lie to him. He could immediately tell if someone was lying just by sensing their mind with his consciousness. Only those with no ulterior motives and has real talent could get through the interview. One day, while Han Shuo was in the middle of one of those interviews, an Ethereal City divine guard hastily went to Han Shuo and said, Mr. Brian, someone who claimed to be your son is having a serious quarrel in the west of the city. He called himself Han Huo. Would you like to go there and have a look? Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment before he immediately came to his senses. He laughed and replied, What's the matter with these kids? Just can't stop stirring up troubles wherever they go. All right, I'll go take a look. Chapter 816, GDK 816. Scam, GDK 816. Scam. Han Shuo rushed to the west of the Ethereal City and he found Fire Elite Zombie, or Han Huo. As soon as Han Shuo saw him, he could tell that Han Huo's intelligence and strength had also advanced to a whole new level. After entering Ethereal City, Han Huo noticed that there were all kinds of shops all around. As he was in no hurry to look for Han Shuo, he started shopping around the city. Han Huo was fighting with the shop assistants of an energy crystal shop because they disagreed on the price of a certain ore. Fire Elite Zombie, who cultivated in the energy of fire, also possessed miraculous skills in utilizing the energy of fire. The shop did not possess any outstandingly powerful experts. 5 or 6 shop assistants ganged up on Han Huo, but in the end, they were still beaten black and blue. If the ethereal city divine guards had not shown up in time, Han Huo might have burned down the shop. The ethereal city divine guards then learned of Han Huo's identity and that he was also Han Shu's son. After discovering that fact, the divine guards dared not do anything to Han Huo, lest they risk making Han Shuo unhappy. They frantically sent a runner to the city lord's manor house to inform Han Shu of the incident while struggling to keep both sides calm. All those divine guards had heard rumors about Han Shuo, and from their city lord's attitude towards Han Shuo, they could tell that Han Shuo wasn't a character they could risk offending. On top of that, Han Shuo was known to be a genius pharmacist, and his Celestial Pearl Pharmacy will soon be open for business in Ethereal City. If they wish to purchase Han Shuo's highly sought-after medicines, they must try to maintain at least a neutral relationship with Han Shuo. Therefore, the divine guards dared not do anything that might offend Han Shuo. When Han Shuo and Han Tu arrived outside the shop, they discovered that its front entrance had been smoked. Han Huo and the shop assistants were glaring at each other right outside the shop. Father, Little Earth, Han Huo immediately cheered when the father and son showed up. He excitedly went to have a hug with Han Tu before looking at Han Shuo cheerfully. What's the matter? Han Shuo was very happy to meet Fire Elite Zombie again. However, he noticed that the ethereal city divine guards were wearing troubled faces and the shop assistants were wearing angry faces. He knew he should try to figure out the whole situation before taking sides. Mr. Brian, your son is shoplifting. The chief divine guard at the scene reported to Han Shuo awkwardly. Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment before he turned to Han Huo, raised an eyebrow, and asked, "Is that true?" "They are talking nonsense. They are asking me 50 black crystal coins just for a piece of firespark stone. Back then, Little Gold told me that a firespark stone is nothing valuable and he can find as many as he wanted. I have been very generous to pay them 5 black crystal coins for that cheap stone," said Han Huo. He even pointed at the shop assistants and angrily said, "You bunch of bastards, how dare you try to scam me in broad daylight? Don't think that I can't wreck your scam shop? You despicable bully, I will kill you, you colossal scumbag," shouted one of the female shop assistants with an elegant appearance. Her face was flushed red and her body was trembling in anger. The other shop assistants were also enraged by his words. If it wasn't for the ethereal city divine guards, they might have charged forward and tried to beat up Han Huo again. If you don't have enough crystal coins, then don't buy it. No one is forcing you to buy the rock. Trying to leave with the item after paying just 5 black crystal coins is daylight robbery. How dare you try to make excuses to justify your outrageous act? Scouted the female shop assistant furiously while baring her teeth. Crazy woman, if you can open a scam shop, then why can't I buy from you? Han Huo put on a disdainful face and said with contempt, "And you better stop shouting or I'll burn you to death." "I'll kill you," shrieked the female shop assistant. She struggled free from an ethereal city divine guard and charged at Han Huo. "Please behave yourself," shouted the divine guard in charge as he hastily formed a barrier of wind energy to block the female shop assistant from approaching. He then turned to Han Shuo in a wry smile and explained, "No matter anywhere on Elysium, firespark stone will never cost less than 45 black crystal coins. The price set by this shop is reasonable. Please understand, Mr. Brian. Little Gold had told me that it's not valuable, so don't try to lie to me." Han Huo shot a glare at the divine guard, rolled his eyes, and said, "You must be siding with them because they bribed you, isn't it?" "Stupid, Little Gold never needed to spend much effort in finding precious rocks. You are such a fool to take his words at face value," said Han Tu as he laughed. Metal Elite Zombie possessed extraordinary power in sensing metal ores and minerals. He could find rare and precious rocks with ease. Those ores might be worthless to Metal Elite Zombie, but to ordinary beings, they could be great treasures. "Oh!" Han Huo immediately came to his senses after hearing Han Tu's words. He patted his head and softly cried, "So that means I've got it wrong? Woman here, I'm giving the stupid stone back to you. Now go away. Don't bother me anymore." A piece of firespark stone was thrown, and it landed right before the female shop assistant's feet. The firespark stone that should be shimmering with red light for some reason was dull and dark. It looked gray-white like any other ordinary stone and seemed to be nothing special. "This is not a fire spark stone. Who are you trying to fool?" shouted the shop assistants furiously after they looked at the stone. They glared at Han Huo with even angrier eyes, as though they had been insulted. Even a blind could see that the stone Han Huo returned was completely different than the one he took. "It is a fire spark stone, it's just that its energy has been drained." An old man who looked all skin and bones abruptly came out from the shop. He went to pick up that ordinary-looking rock before looking at Han Huo in an amazed face. He curiously asked, "How did you do that?" Even an alchemist master needed magical matrices to extract the energy within a fire spark stone, and they had to spend at least a few days. "You have held the stone for not even 10 minutes, and yet you managed to extract all the energy in it. How is that possible?" "Grandpa Miles." All the shop assistants were surprised by the abrupt appearance of that old man. They all became respectful in attitude. Even that shop assistant who threatened to kill Han Huo turned calm. Miles gestured with his hand, asking the shop assistants to be silent. His gazes never moved from Han Huo, as though he was keen to obtain an explanation from him. "It's just a piece of fire spark stone. Extracting the fire energy within is too simple. It's nothing to write home about," replied Han Huo in a disdainful face, as though he was disinclined to talk to the old man. After a moment of observation, Han Huo discovered that Miles, although senile in appearance, actually possessed high god strength. However, Han Huo could not determine which of the 12 fundamental forces he cultivated. "I will give you another fire spark store, free of charge. Can you do it again for me?" Miles put on a faint smile, took out an even bigger fire spark stone from his space ring, and handed it to Han Huo. "You are a pretty interesting guy, old man. Hee, watch carefully." Han Huo held the fire spark stone glowing red in his palm. Under the gazes of the crowd, the fire spark stone slowly turned dimmer. In less than 1 minute, the fire spark stone stopped glowing completely and turned into a dull and ordinary-looking gray-white rock. "This is miraculous," cried Miles under his breath. He looked at Han Huo in disbelief as he said, "That's unbelievable. I know many cultivators of the fire element, but I have never known anyone who could extract the energy from a fire spark stone, much less so rapidly." Fire spark stones could be considered as an energy crystal, and it was very different from fire divine essences. An average cultivator of the element of fire could never extract the fire energy in a fire spark stone. Not just Miles, but even the shop assistants and the ethereal city divine guards were greatly astonished by the ability Han Huo demonstrated. An average cultivator of the fire energy might not be able to do it, but Han Huo was not an average cultivator. His body was forged using the yuan energy of fire in the place of extreme fire. To him, absorbing the fire energy in a fire spark stone was as easy as pie. "Speechless now, aren't you?" said Han Huo complacently. With his head raised high, he smugly said, "Is there anything else? If not, Chow, you brat, where did you learn to be so cocky?" Han Huo couldn't help but smilingly rebuked when he saw Han Huo being so arrogant. "Hee, nowhere, father. We have not seen each other for a long time. Let's not waste time with them. Let's leave this scam shop and celebrate our reunion." Han Huo immediately cowered. Han Huo tossed out a sack of black crystal coins, and it landed right at the front of the shop. In a faint smile, he said, "That is 1,000 black crystal coins. Consider it compensation for your shop's losses. Please don't take any offense." "Wah, wait." Out of Han Huo's expectation, Han Tu and Han Huo simultaneously started to scream. And before Han Huo could react, the two had darted to the front of the shop and picked up the sack of black crystal coins Han Huo tossed. While holding the bag tightly, Han Tu took out 100 black crystal coins from the bag, placed it on the ground, and said, "My father must have taken out the wrong bag. 100 black crystal coins are more than enough to compensate for your shop's losses." Those at the scene clearly heard Han Huo said, 1,000 black crystal coins. Han Tu tried to retract his father's words shamelessly. Han Huo frantically nodded and said, "Yes, it's enough, it's more than enough. We have been very magnanimous to give your scam shop 100 black crystal coins. Don't ask for more." The divine guard in charge put on a grimace and was speechless. Han Huo felt very embarrassed. He did not expect these two kids to be so stingy. "Father, how could you be so wasteful? Black crystal coins are good stuff." With enough of them, there's nothing that you can't buy. How could you squander them like that? Han Hu sighed and lamented, if I have enough black crystal coins, I wouldn't have wasted so much time with these people. How could you toss out 1,000 black crystal coins just like that? You bunch of bums. Han Shu was between laughter and tears after seeing Han Tu and Han Hu being so mean over money matters. Several thousand black crystal coins were next to nothing to him. It appeared that although these two kids of his had made tremendous progress in strength and intelligence, they still weren't good at making money. Chapter 817, Goldstone Energy Crystal Trading Enterprise GDK 817. Goldstone Energy Crystal Trading Enterprise? Father, you may not know it, but during all these years, the thing I lacked most are black crystal coins. It was after leaving you that I discovered that doing anything in this world takes black crystal coins, said Han Huo as though he was grieving. He kept on grumbling about being limited by the number of crystal coins he had. Han Tu nodded in agreement as Han Huo spoke. He was hugging the sack of black crystal coins tightly as though afraid that someone might snatch it from him. That, Miles had a wry smile. He did not understand how a father as rich as Han Shu could have two ridiculously stingy kids. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, for he did not know what to say. He was confused and curious about the three's relationship. Han Shuo fiercely glared at Han Tu and Han Huo and said in an annoyed voice, "What a disgrace! It's just crystal coins. In the future, I will give you any amount you want." Han Shu then turned Miles, put on a smile, and said embarrassingly, "My apologies. My two sons are still a bit wet behind the ears." Han Tu and Han Huo suddenly turned to look at each other and exchanged glances. Their eyes were filled with lights of excitement. They then simultaneously turned to look at Han Shu in foolish smiles and asked, "Father, you have gotten rich? Haha, wonderful, wonderful." "I was never poor." Han Shuo let out a groan and said, "Let's leave. You brats have brought enough shame on me already. I will give you any amount of crystal coins you want later." "Yay, fantastic," cheered Han Huo. He then turned to Miles in a disdainful face and proudly said, "Old man, you hear that. My father has plenty of crystal coins. Next time, don't act like a snob." "I did not," replied Miles as he forced a smile. He thought, it was you who tried to take my item like a robber. When did it become me who is in the wrong?" "I, young Master Han Huo, young Master Han Tu, I beg you, please, for our sake, please don't be so reckless around the city," pleaded the most senior ethereal city divine guard on the scene. He was afraid that the two might cause even more and even bigger troubles around ethereal city soon. "Not your goddamn business," replied Han Huo. He offhandedly said, "I know you are a gang with them. Don't think I can't see that." You. The divine guard was absolutely speechless. He didn't know what to do, so he turned to look helplessly at Han Shuo. But before Han Shuo could speak, the old man called Miles suddenly jolted as though he recalled something. He looked at Earth and Fire elite zombies in astonishment and asked, You too, what are you called again?" "My name is Han Huo. Is there any problem?" Fire elite zombie turned fierce again. He said, "Old man, you should know to appreciate our kindness. We have given you 100 black crystal coins. What more do you want? You better not make me angry, or I'll burn down your shop." Miles suddenly burst into laughter and seemed rather happy. He looked at Han Huo in an amused manner, and as though he was not afraid of him at all, he replied, "Go ahead, but if you burn down the shop, someone is gonna get you." "Old man, you are asking for trouble." Han Huo then turned to Han Shuo, pointed at Miles, and said, "Father, you heard him. He is insisting on messing with us. Ha ha ha, if you burn down the shop, you are shooting yourself in your foot. By then, when my shop owner comes for you, I doubt you'll dare complain even if he whacks you," said Miles. He didn't seem to be afraid at all. "Grandpa Miles, are you all right?" The shop assistants were astonished. They felt that Miles had been behaving rather abnormally. Han Huo seemed to have been infuriated by Miles' words, and he claimed in a fearless face, "Who is that person? Other than my father, whoever tries to beat me, I will pay it back to the person by 10 folds." Miles ignored the astonished shop assistants. Under the wrathful eyes of Han Huo, Miles pointed at the signboard as he smilingly said, "I'm not the owner of this shop. I'm only managing the shop on behalf of the actual owner. Look, do you see what's the name of this shop?" "Goldstone, so what with it?" groaned Han Huo. Goldstone Energy Crystal Trading, they have branches not just in Ethereal City, but also in the Destiny, Fire, Life, Wind, Earth, and Lightning dominions. It is an enormous energy crystal enterprise, explained the Ethereal City Divine Guard who had just been insulted by Han Huo. Then, so what? Han Huo was fearless. He did not turn to look at that Divine Guard, but had his eyes fixed on Miles. Nothing much, haha, but my master's name also carried the word, Han. Miles still wore a big smile on his face. His gazes suddenly turned to Han Shuo as though he was even more curious about him. Han Shuo's eyebrows rose in surprise. He quickly asked, "What is his name?" "My master's name is Han Jin," replied Miles before he started laughing heartily. Then, after taking a short pause, Miles curbed his smile and asked in a low voice, "Only a few in this world have this name. But I'm sure you are familiar with this person, right?" Han Huo and Han Tu turned to look at each other in great astonishment. After a long while, Han Huo suddenly shouted, "Little Gold, turns out to be him." The hostility instantly vanished from Han Huo. He even went forward to pat on Miles' shoulder in a friendly manner and said in a big smile, "I have been wondering why I find you so pleasing to the eye. So it turns out that we are all on the same side." "Haha." Miles forced a smile as he thought, "Since when did you find me pleasing? I thought you wanted to burn down the shop just a moment ago. I damn. Little Gold is indeed doing real well, so much so that he has his own shop. Hoo-hoo, if I knew that he is the master of Goldstone, I would have asked him for some crystal coins," lamented Han Tu with his palm on his head. There were branches of Goldstone Energy Crystal Trading Enterprise in the Earth Dominion, but Han Tu had never imagined that his brother, Metal Elite Zombie, was the shop owner. "My master has instructed that those whose name starts with the name Han, specifically Han Shuo, Han Tu, Han Mu, Han Huo, Han Shui, and Han Hao, may take anything they want from the shop, free of charge, and we are to give them any amount of crystal coins they want," explained Miles smilingly before he invited them. "Shall we head inside and have a chat?" Han Shuo was also shocked by the news. He did not expect that the owner of this shop would be Metal Elite Zombie. And from the words of that Divine Guard, Goldstone had been very prosperous, with many branches established in numerous divine dominions. It appeared that Han Jin had been much more financially successful than his brothers. But after spending a moment thinking about it, Han Shuo felt that it was only reasonable for Han Jin to get filthy rich. Given his extraordinary sensitivity towards ores, as long as he spent some time on it, he will surely find ore deposits of any kind. An average being needed to excavate for years or even decades before they could locate the ore veins in a large mountain or creek. Han Jin, however, could tell what ores were located in the region and point to the exact spots of those ore deposits just by walking around the area. With this wonderful ability, Metal Elite Zombie could find and extract rare energy crystals at a lower cost and in less time, allowing him to sell them at a competitive price without cutting on his profit margins. Blessed with this advantage, it would be a wonder if his business doesn't get huge and prosperous. Han Shuo was very proud of what he had achieved with the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy in the City of Shadows. However, the Celestial Pearl paled in comparison to Metal Elite Zombie's Goldstone Energy Crystal Trading Enterprise located in various divine dominions. Han Shuo felt that his son had outshined him. "Yes, let's have a chat," replied Han Shuo as he nodded and smiled. They then walked into the Goldstone shop. Simultaneously, in a thin jungle outside Ethereal City, a battle was happening. A group of sinister gods, brimming with the aura of death, were assaulting a small family clan. It was clear from their looks that they were god hunters cultivating in the energy of death. All of them were fierce and formidable looking. They were well coordinated and worked wonderfully as a team. It seemed as though they knew a certain fighting formation. Members of the small family clan traveling to Ethereal City were being slaughtered one after another, with every valuable item they carried looted. Those who cultivated in the energy of death had their divine energy slowly sucked dry. Many times before your family clan had tried to annihilate us. Didn't expect yourself to have such an ending, did ya? A one-eyed god hunter, whose face was filled with scars, remarked grimly while staring coldly at the last remaining survivor with late-stage mid-god strength. "I did not expect any of you to grow this strong. But that doesn't matter, for sooner or later, all of you will die to my patriarch. He will hunt down each and every one of you. The mid-god was a tough character and felt no fear even in the face of death. He suddenly cried, "Let's rot in hell." He was prepared to severely injure or kill the god hunters with his death. A 3-meter-long bone spear abruptly streaked across the sky. It sucked away all the elements of death in the space it passed. And before that mid-god could self-destruct himself, the bone spear had pinned on him. He died instantly. This late-stage mid-god had shown no capacity to resist or even react to the bone spear that came out of nowhere. Evidently, the attacker's strength was way above his. A teenager wearing a calm face walked into the scene unhurriedly. His gaze was chilling, sinister, nefarious. He had 7 long and white bone spears attached to his back. His body overflowed with a mightily intimidating, austere aura. Upon arrival, he held out a hand and moved his fingers. The 3-meter-long bone spear immediately flew back into his spotlessly white palm. The brows of the teenager slightly wrinkled before he said in a deep voice, "Next time, cut the crap and just kill." All the god hunters in the area respectfully bowed when the teenager appeared. The one-eyed god hunter, whose face was filled with scars, looked at the teenager with revering eyes before he lowered his head and said, "Yes, Chief." The teenager nodded and commanded, "Stay around this region. You may carry out attacks on your own. I need to make a trip to Ethereal City. None of you will step into the city without my explicit instruction." The one-eyed and scar-faced god hunter stared blankly for a bit before he respectfully asked, "Chief, when will you return?" "I don't know. But while I'm away, be more careful with your actions. Do not attack any group that has a high god." The teenager then straightforwardly left the gang of sinister gods and headed for Ethereal City by himself. Chapter 818. Gifts from Metal Elite Zombie GDK 818. Gifts from Metal Elite Zombie. Miles led Han Shuo, Han Tu, and Han Huo into the Energy Crystal Store. It was after stepping into the Goldstone branch that Han Shuo realized the scale of the business operation. There were racks after racks of rare and strange ores put on display. Many of the ores could glow. The shop was brightly lit, even though there were only a few magical lamps. After instructing the shop assistants to get back to their stations, Miles led Han Shuo and his 2 kids to a secret warehouse deep inside the shop. This decently sized depot was filled with dazzling firespark stones and heavenlifier stones, mud yellow renticite and teratomite, and translucent water soul stones and aquacrystal. Every ore and item inside were extremely precious and especially useful for earth, fire, water, and wood elite zombies. Over the past 10 years, through various channels, my master has been delivering all sorts of unique, precious ores collected by every branch to this shop in Ethereal City. He also assigned me to this branch so that I can keep watch and secure these ores. Haha, Master said that these ores are all prepared for you, explained Miles smilingly to the astonished Han Huo and Han Tu. The wide variety of ores stored in the warehouse were very useful for the elite zombies. There were also a considerable amount of divine essences. Most of the divine essences belonged to the energy of fire, life, water, earth, and death. It was obvious that Metal Elite Zombie had gathered the items for them. The depot was filled with a spectacular amount of valuable ores and crystals. Just the pile of divine essences alone would value at several million black crystal coins. Other ores and energy crystals located there were also fantastic materials that were no less beneficial for the elite zombies. "Damn, he's real awesome," said Han Huo, whose eyes were glistening with greedy lights. He threw himself into a pile of fire energy rocks and started absorbing the fire energy contained within. "Little Gold is really generous to have gotten us so much good stuff," said Han Tu in a foolish smile while he grabbed onto a handful of teratomite and started absorbing the earth energy contained within. "It seems that he really has been thoughtful of us all these years," remarked the touched Han Shuo. Even without Miles' explanation, it was obvious to Han Shuo that the reason Metal Elite Zombie had been sending and accumulating items in this store was so that Han Shuo and the others could have all these wonderful treasures when they meet again there in Ethereal City. Master had instructed that after you have arrived in Ethereal City, we are to follow your orders, said Miles as he bowed at Han Shuo. However, the name given by Master was Han Shuo. As you were using another name in Ethereal City, we did not know that you had arrived. "You know who I am?" asked Han Shu with a brow raised. Miles nodded smilingly and replied, "You are the father to my master." "Haha, of course I know who you are." After hearing those words from Miles, Han Shu became certain that he was a trusted aide of Metal Elite Zombie. Otherwise, Miles wouldn't have known so much, and he wouldn't have been trusted with all these treasures. "Where is he currently at?" asked Han Shuo. He reasoned that if Metal Elite Zombie had arranged all these in the shop, he should know that it was almost time for their scheduled reunion, and he should at least be on his way to Ethereal City. "Master should be on his way here. He will arrive in Ethereal City soon," replied Miles smilingly. Then, after taking a short pause, Miles somewhat nervously asked, "Do you have any instructions for me? You may take anything and everything in the store. If you need crystal coins, I can get you a few million." Han Shu shook his head smilingly and replied, "Things seem to be doing just fine here, and I don't see the need to make any changes. For the time being, I don't need you to do anything for me. I'm not lacking crystal coins either." "Understood." After finding out that Han Shu was the owner of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy, Miles knew that it was very unlikely for Han Shu to be lacking crystal coins. "Right, I will be taking some of the ores in this shop," said Han Shu smilingly after he thought for a bit. The Goldstone shop had more variety of ores than any of their rivals. When walking into the shop, several extremely rare materials most excellent for making weapons had caught his eyes. "Go ahead. As I've said, you may take anything you see in the shop," replied Miles straightforwardly. As everything in the shop belonged to Metal Elite Zombie, and Miles was instructed to give Han Shu anything he wanted. Han Shu had no qualms about taking the items. He began by taking some ores and divine essences in the secret depot before proceeding to the outer sections of the shop with Miles. There, he took a dozen more odd and bizarre rocks and crystals. After Han Shuo was done, they waited for a moment for Han Huo and Han Tu to exit from the secret depot. The two kids appeared very content and delighted. They constantly fondled the space rings they wore on their fingers. They must have kept away all those ores meant for them that were in the secret depot. "All right, we shall leave now. Please tell him about what happened today when he returned." Han Shu smilingly said goodbye to Miles after Han Huo and Han Tu came out from the shop. "Don't worry, I will make sure to tell Master everything that happened today." Miles bowed as Han Shu and his kids left. "Grandpa Miles, who are they? They have taken many items off our shop, but they haven't paid a single crystal coin." "Who in the world are they?" asked the female shop assistant who almost fought Han Huo after the father and sons left. Not just her, but all other shop assistants of Goldstone were puzzled and wanted an answer. They saw Han Shuo clearing items off the shelves, throwing all sorts of mineral rocks into his space ring straightforwardly. And after that, not only that he did not pay a single piece of crystal coins, he acted as though the shop belonged to him. Even Miles was humble and constantly bowed at him. They could not quite understand what was happening. These minor little workers did not know about the existence of Metal Elite Zombie. Only some of the most core members of Goldstone Trading were aware that Metal Elite Zombie was the real owner of the enterprise. Even fewer people knew about Metal Elite Zombie's relationship with Han Shu and others. It was normal that these workers were clueless. Miles' face turned stern. In a deep voice, he said to the shop workers, "I want you all to keep this in mind. Tell no one about what happened today and don't try to find out what you should not know. Perhaps someday in the future, when you have obtained the trust of the owner and become a Dominional manager of Goldstone Enterprise, you will be qualified to learn these secrets." Miles scanned the young shop assistants with his eyes once through, lightly groaned, and said, "If I find out any of you leak this, I won't go easy on you." "All right, that will be all. Now get back to your work." The shop workers jolted and were frightened. They had very rarely seen Miles being so stern towards them, and they realized that those three people must be very important characters. They promised to keep quiet about the matter and silently walked back to their stations. In the City Lord's manor, City Lord Baum was wearing a bewildered expression while listening to the report given by the Divine Guard, who was at Goldstone Trading just then. "Did you say that the guy named Han Huo is also his son?" asked Baum halfway into the briefing. Just like Han Tu in the Earth Dominion, Han Huo was also a pretty famous person in the Fire Dominion, or, rather, infamous. He often got into fights with others over minor quarrels, and had offended many in the Fire Dominion. As he possessed supreme mastery in using the energy of fire and wielded the Fire Lotus, the most outstanding weapon of fire attribute, Han Huo was not afraid of challenging experts at a more advanced realm. He was most widely known among the young people in the Fire Dominion. Baum was already rather surprised that Han too was Han Xiu's son. He grew even more astonished now he learned that Han Hu of the Fire Dominion was also his son. Baum became more and more curious towards Han Xiu, wondering why he came to Ethereal City and what he was planning. The Divine Guard nodded and respectfully replied. Moreover, it appeared that the owner of Goldstone Enterprise has a close relationship with him. Goldstone is one of the largest energy crystal stores in our city. They have branches in almost every dominion and possessed greater influence than the Celestial Pearl. However, when the manager of the Goldstone branch heard their names, he immediately turned friendly in attitude. What? Baum was gobsmacked. Although Earth and Fire elite zombies possessed decent strengths and had some miraculous abilities, they were just two individuals who weren't even high gods. Baum had deemed them too weak to be reckoned with. But things were very different when it comes to Goldstone Enterprise. With shops located in almost every divine dominion, Goldstone possessed not just tremendous financial resources, but also connections. To learn that the mysterious business owner might have a close relationship with Han Xiu, Baum felt threatened. I was inviting this person to stay in Ethereal City a bad move? I pondered the intimidated Baum. After thinking for a moment, he instructed the Divine Guard, pay extra attention to that Goldstone store. Also, try talking to those shop workers. Try to learn what they have discussed inside the shop. My lord, should I also keep a close watch over Brian and those few with him? Asked the Divine Guard after bowing in acknowledgement. Baum shook his head. He seemed rather grave as he replied, You should not get close to them. Don't send anyone to monitor them and just leave them alone. I will handle them. Yes, my lord. The Divine Guard immediately dismissed himself and went on to carry out the task Baum assigned him with. Brian, oh Brian, what exactly are you up to in Ethereal City? Soliloquized Baum with his brows bunched after the Divine Guard left. He did not know that on the top of a big tree, several hundred meters away, there was a demon general, observing his every move day and night. Chapter 819. Establishing a Presence, GDK 819. Establishing a presence a few more days went by like the blink of an eye. During this time, Han Xiu had recruited a sufficient number of workers and pharmacists for his new shop. Baum had also completed the renovation for the new Celestial Pearl branch. Therefore, Han Xiu no longer stayed in the city lord's manor house and moved into the new shop. After having heard the conversation that Baum had with his Divine Guard through a demon general, Han Xiu became even more certain that Baum had a hidden agenda and did not help him purely out of generosity. This was consistent with McKinley's story that Baum was a scheming person. Han Xiu knew he needed to be extra careful when dealing with Baum. But after making that discovery, the demon general that had been constantly surveilling Baum no longer discovered any other unusual activities. Baum had been cultivating in his manor house for those dozen or so days. He had only met a few people and did not do anything suspicious. Han Xiu had also released several demon generals to roam all around the city lord's manor house, trying to find McKinley's divine body. However, after searching every corner, not only did they find no suspicious items, but they also did not discover any storage room in the manor house. Han Xiu knew that recovering McKinley's body wouldn't be a straightforward and easy task. Being a cautious man, Han Xiu had also assigned a demon general to follow the Divine Guard that Baum sent for sounding out the Goldstone's employees. He noticed that the workers were all tight-lipped, as though they had been warned by Miles. The Ethereal City Divine Guards had learned nothing useful from them. Han Xiu felt that of all his kids, Metal Elite Zombie was the most talented in managing business and human resources. Although he would likely be the weakest in strength compared to his brothers, due to the lack of Elysians cultivating in the energy of metal, he had directly benefited Han Xiu the greatest by using his innate ability. The Goldstone Enterprise has branches in all dominions. Han Xiu could learn the situation in any corner of the Elysium by using the connections Goldstone had. Right now, Han Shuo was most longing to meet Metal Elite Zombie again. He wanted to ask him about the Goldstone Enterprise and to hopefully learn management skills from him, which would be greatly beneficial to the future development of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. With Baum doing the promotion, every god in every corner of Ethereal City learned that a Celestial Pearl branch will soon be open for business in the city. Before the pharmacy store was even open for business, many gods had started queuing outside, wanting to buy Han Shuo's medicines. During his journey from the City of Shadows to Ethereal City, Han Shuo had traversed countless mountains and rivers, where he had collected enough medicinal ingredients to fill one space ring. He had also refined a large number of pelleted medicines during that time. Han Shuo was working on full throttle. Following his instructions, the pharmacists he recruited started producing some common medicines while the shop workers were making relevant preparations. It did not take long before the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy officially opened for business in Ethereal City. On the first day of business, Han Shuo took out 1,000 bottles of his miraculous pelleted medicines and put them for sale on a special rack. They were sold out to the large crowd in no time. Han Shuo earned around 70,000 black crystal coins by the end of the first day. Those who had managed to get their hands on the medicines Han Shuo personally refined felt the promised benefits right after consuming it. Naturally, these gods started promoting the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy for Han Shuo, free of charge. For a period of time, the entire Ethereal City was talking about the miraculousness of the medicines from Celestial Pearl. Everything went very smoothly. After the initial success, Han Shuo took out yet another portion of his medicines for sale. The Celestial Pearl store was crammed as gods from every block and street swarmed to the shop. They would spare no black crystal coins to get their hands on Han Shuo's medicines. All those who had managed to buy the medicines would conscientiously become a promoter of the pharmacy. The Celestial Pearl Pharmacy and its owner, Han Shuo, rapidly rose to fame in Ethereal City and became well known to the gods living in the city. While the shop was open for business, there were a few uncultured cunts who cut queues and forced their way into the shop to buy Han Shuo's wonderful medicine. When that happened, Han Shuo would give Rose a meaningful glance, and she would immediately kick their asses off the shop. There were also some who tried sneaking into the pharmacy at night. Han Shuo and Rose would kill all those intruders on the spot with no warning. Those certain forces came to recognize that Celestial Pearl Pharmacy was not merely a simple pharmacy chain when all those experts they sent in never returned. After all those who intruded the Celestial Pearl failed to return time and time again, there was no longer any powerhouse who dared take their strength lightly. Everyone stopped trying to get the medicine through illegal means. Then, when the business got into a stable orbit, Han Shuo announced that he will only sell his special medicines once every few years, just as he did back in the City of Shadows. Although everyone was saddened by that announcement, the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy had successfully made a name for itself. Even without Han Shuo's personally refined medicines, its business will be doing much better than other pharmacies in the city. Time flies. More than half a month passed in the blink of an eye. The Celestial Pearl Pharmacy had slowly rooted itself in Ethereal City. However, Han Shuo was feeling rather worried as little skeleton, wood, water, and metal elite zombies had yet to appear. Han Shuo had even gone to the Goldstone store twice to ask about Han Jin. But the only answer he got from Miles was that Metal Elite Zombie was temporarily out of contact, and he should be on the way. Han Shuo looked at the calendar and saw that there was just half a year left before their agreed meeting date, which wasn't all that long. Han Shuo started to get somewhat anxious, worried that they might have run into trouble. It was at this time that Han Shuo came to understand how it felt to be a father and realized that it was not easy at all. He felt restless and uneasy waiting for them and wanted to go search for them, but he did not know where to start looking. Are they all right? Perhaps they have been injured. Or maybe. I wondered Han Shuo for the 1,000th time with his brows tightly bunched. Father, you don't have to worry, they will be just fine, consoled Han Tu after noticing that Han Shuo had been rather edgy recently. Being telepathically connected, they could sense the source of Han Shuo's anxiousness. Yeah, don't worry. Little gold, little wood, and little water should all be on their way here. As to our eldest brother, he most definitely isn't in any trouble because he is the most powerful, said Han Huo cheerfully. The eldest brother he mentioned was none other than Little Skeleton. As Han Shuo had made Little Skeleton before the 5 elite zombies, they naturally considered him as their eldest brother. Hopefully so, sighed Han Shuo. He then instructed Han Tu, Han Huo, and Rose, be extra careful tonight. I will be visiting the city lord's manor house. I wonder what he invited me there for. Don't worry, there haven't been any thieves lately. They are now too afraid of us to try to intrude, said Han Huo in a fearless and complacent face. It was as though he could defeat any intruders with his eyes closed. When Rose noticed that Han Shuo was staring at her, she nodded and replied, with me here, there shouldn't be an issue. Han Shuo became slightly more at ease. He instructed Han Tu, if you meet an enemy that you cannot fight off, you will bring Rose and Little Fire and flee. As to those shop workers and pharmacists, bring them along if you can. But if you can't, just leave them. Yes, I know, Father. Please stop nagging, replied Han Tu smilingly. He clearly also did not take Han Shuo's words seriously, thinking that no one would dare intrude the pharmacy or stupid enough to throw away their life. Han Shuo couldn't help but laugh at himself after hearing those words. He too felt that he was becoming more and more annoyingly wordy in recent days. He would always tell Han Tu and Han Huo some cautionary tales. He had also been constantly nagging Han Huo to be more prudent in the future, lest he offends experts that he cannot defeat. When Han Shuo saw that those 2 brats of his not taking his words seriously, he forced a smile and sighed. However, after thinking for a moment, he realized it was true that there haven't been any trespassers lately. Therefore, Han Shuo did not nag them any longer and traveled to Baum's manor house. Soon after Han Shuo left, night came and veiled the sky. The workers and pharmacists of Celestial Pearl went into their dormitories to rest. The Celestial Pearl branch was refurbished from a small manor. At the front was the actual shop where all kinds of medicines were sold. Behind that were pharmacy labs and buildings for the workers to rest. The main warehouse was in a separate building, protected by boundaries that Han Shuo and Rose deployed. The Celestial Pearl workers and pharmacists had gotten used to the strange noises after the first few nights. They no longer feel worried about their safety when they realized none of their coworkers were harmed, and those miserable shrieks came from strangers. They also gradually came to realize that Celestial Pearl was no average pharmacy. That night, they went on and carried out their usual routine. Some went to their rooms to rest, while some continued to refine medicines. None of them were concerned about intruders or attackers. Rose, who was in the gymnasium, suddenly bunched her brows and abruptly got up from her meditation. Right when she exited the door to look for Han Tu and Han Huo, she saw the 2 approaching her surreptitiously. There are enemies. It seems quite different this time. There seems to be a high god, said Han Tu softly after they got beside Rose. It must have something to do with that fucking Baum. Not a single intrusion happened during all those days Father was in the shop. But right on the night that he is away, the enemy comes. Coincidence? I think not, cursed Han Huo in a low voice. You too be careful. If there's any real danger, just escape without me. Rose knew that Han Tu had the ability to escape by tunneling underground. She knew that Han Shuo loved the 2 kids very much and definitely cannot accept anything to happen to the 2. Woman, what are you worrying about? Don't you remember what my father said before he left? I'm more than capable of bringing all 3 of us to escape if there's any danger we can't handle, replied Han Tu smugly. Yeah, that's right. You are my father's woman. How can we allow anything to happen to you? If you are not around, who is going to sleep with my father? Said Han Huo in a mischievous smile. Rose turned red-faced after being teased by the 2 buffoons. Her slight nervousness was replaced with an urge to beat up the brothers. Han Tu and Han Huo started smirking mischievously after seeing Rose's reaction. They continued to mock Rose, as though this ancient and mighty high god was nothing to be afraid of. Chapter 820, Come and Hit Me. GDK 820, Come and Hit Me. The pharmacy workers and pharmacists were clueless about the situation. Rose, Han Huo, and Han Tu were on high alert. They were silently observing the entire shop from the top floor of the depot. Rose suddenly felt something strange. While Han Shuo was with her, she had never felt worried about any enemy. It was as though with Han Shuo in the shop, the shop is invulnerable to any attacks. But on that night, when Han Shuo was away and she needed to assume the responsibility alone, Rose felt somewhat anxious. Suddenly, Rose was astonished, for she realized that she had unwittingly become reliant on Han Shuo. When Han Shuo was around her, she would feel that there was nothing that could harm her. But when Han Shuo was not around and she had to fill the role as the leader, she felt exposed and unsheltered. Knowing that it was no time to lose focus, Rose temporarily cast aside all irrelevant thoughts and placed all her attention on the shadows of the buildings outside the shop, sensing the strength and number of the attackers. During recent times, Rose had gotten used to taking care of criminals attempting to loot the shop in the middle of the night. The strength and number of the intruders had been steadily increasing ever since the first intrusion. But ever since a high god intruder was killed, they abruptly stopped trying to sneak into the shop. It had been a while since anyone tried to loot the shop. Rose thought that the raiders had finally learned to be afraid and won't be sending themselves to death anymore. She did not foresee that the raiders would again attempt to loot the pharmacy on that night. She was also surprised that the raiders were led by a mid-stage high god. She knew that a fierce battle would be unavoidable. The leader is a mid-stage high god. I can vaguely sense that he is a cultivator of the lightning energy. I will be keeping his hand tight, and you two will have to take care of the rest of them. Be extra careful. He is not around and we can't afford to make any mistakes, stressed Rose with her brows slightly bunched. Don't worry about it, we will fight if we can, and if we can't, we will just run away. It's no big deal, said Han Tu laughingly, as though the raiders were nothing to be afraid of. Han Huo nodded in agreement and had a complacent face. He believed that with Han Tu, they can easily escape from any danger, anytime they wanted. When Rose saw the two kids being so complacent, she wanted to rebuke them, but kept to her own counsel. She did not give any more advice and continued to sense the enemies silently. The dimly lit streets were shrouded by a gray fog. The intruders, who had been concealing themselves in dark for some time, began approaching the shop. Shadows after shadows nimbly made a beeline for the Celestial Pearl warehouse. The warehouse was used for storing all kinds of medicines. The raiders thought that all of Han Shuo's personally refined medicines must be kept in there. The raiders had also sensed the presence of Rose, Han Tu, and Han Huo. They knew that they must get through the three before they could obtain the special medicines of Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. "Identify yourselves," cried Rose before the moving shadows got near. At the same instant, she launched her attack. The divine energy of darkness spread out from her body. The element of darkness were gathered and turned into ink-black clouds. Threads of darkness overflowed from the dense dark clouds and silently grew and spread like inks in water. The sky above the warehouse seemed to have been dyed with black ink. The already faint amount of light at night time was completely consumed. The region plunged into absolute darkness within a few seconds. Threads of darkness, divine energy gradually spread in every direction like thousands of tiny water streams. Those few raiders at the frontmost of their group suddenly felt that their arms and legs were incredibly heavy, as though they had been filled with lead. Although the threads of darkness, divine energy, could not kill those raiders, it had severely disrupted the normal circulation of energy in their divine bodies. Not only that their movement was severely impacted, but those who did not cultivate in the energy of darkness had also become completely blind. Although the raiders were unable to see anything around them and terribly afraid of being assaulted, they continued to march forward cautiously. Unfortunately for the raiders, their worst fears were realized. There was no way the Han Huo and Han Tu would not make use of this perfect circumstance to strike them. While Rose was using her darkness divine energy to slow down and blind the raiders, Han Tu and Han Huo had been silently approaching them. Just like their maker, Han Huo and Han Tu could see in the dark, and therefore immune to absolute darkness. As the two were conceived through unique means, they could precisely locate their targets just by sensing the life auras of the raiders, and they did not even need to rely on their visions. Painful cries started playing from within the absolute darkness. Those who were struck by Han Huo and Han Tu's sneak attacks dared not scream too loud and hastily retreated after suffering great injuries. Two of the raiders who couldn't react to their sneak attacks in time died on the spot. The raiders who intend on sneaking into the shop under the cover of darkness, ironically, were being assaulted by Han Huo and Han Tu concealing under Rose's field of absolute darkness. Return. Just when Han Huo and Han Tu were starting to have fun, the voice of a middle-aged man suddenly commanded the raiders to fall back. The raiders immediately complied and retreated from the region of absolute darkness that Rose formed. A man with a tall, big build and broad shoulders came into appearance. His face was hidden under a crude, gray-white mask that had 2 holes just wide enough to reveal his glistening eyes. He seemed surprised that the Celestial Pearl had another expert at the level of Rose other than Han Shuo. After commanding his mob, who were also wearing strange-looking masks, to retreat, his eyes turned to Rose, who was in the center of the dissipating dark clouds. Rose needed to spend divine energy to maintain the absolute darkness. Seeing that the raiders had retreated, she did not waste her divine energy on maintaining the field of absolute darkness. She looked at the raiders apathetically and shouted in an ice-cold voice, "No matter who you are, leave. You won't get anything from here. This is more than just looting. You have killed my younger brother. I've come to kill all of you," replied the raider wearing a gray-white mask in an angry voice. Rose's heart sank after hearing those words because she realized that the threat cannot be easily resolved. If their only intention was to loot the pharmacy, they would most likely retreat out of fear of her mighty strength. But as this raider was here for vengeance, he was highly motivated to have an all-out fight. With Han Shuo not around, against such a large group of powerful experts led by a ferocious mid-stage high god, Rose was uncertain if she could defend the pharmacy. If this mid-stage high god was to retreat, Rose would let him leave. Otherwise, Rose would have no choice but to fight. "Who's your brother? Many have died in our shop recently. We have no clue which is which." Han Huo still wore boldface even when confronting this high god expert. He even taunted the raider. "He came here 10 days ago, the one with early stage high god strength. He's my younger brother," the man gestured, commanding his gang to spread apart as he marched towards Rose step by step. "Oh, that dum-dum, I remember him. He kept on fighting instead of escaping after we broke his legs. Haha, what a fucking idiot," said Han Huo laughingly and condescendingly. "Kill!" shouted the gray-masked raider, and he charged straight at Han Huo. A thick column of thunderbolt made using pure energy of lightning grew from his palm. Simultaneously, his domain of divinity was deployed. Tiny little lightning bolts meandered around his domain like millions of fry. "What the fuck? Don't look for me," cursed Han Huo loudly as he hastily flew towards Rose. Although Han Huo was aggressive and arrogant in character, he was not a fool. He was prepared to scuttle before he ridiculed the high god raider. Rose no longer hesitated, and she flew down from the top of the building like a dark spirit. A lump of the aura of darkness rapidly came covering down at the high god of thunder. As both of them were mid-stage high gods, they had to use their full strength when fighting. A ferocious battle instantly started. The 2 high god were so occupied with each other that they had no time to mind anything else. Han Huo and Han Tu dodged the 2 battling high god and went to fight with the other raiders. Although the 2 were just mid-stage mid-gods, their comprehension of the energy of fire and earth exceeded those of high gods. Even when pitted against a dozen or more experts who were around the same realm they were at, the duo did not show any sign of being on the back foot. Han Huo took out his fire lotus, and it covered him with its petals. He was glowing bright red from head to toe like heated steel. An enormous amount of heat was emanating from his body. The raiders fighting Han Huo felt rather helpless. As he was covered with fire, they couldn't make any melee attacks or even get close to him. They could only launch ineffective ranged attacks at him. Those fighting Han Tu felt even more helpless and unbearable. They lost track of him right from the start of the battle. A hand or an earth spike might suddenly emerge from underground, which could amputate them if they were not careful enough. As they could not locate Han Tu, they could only take defensive measures. Fighting against Han Huo and Han Tu, who employed extraordinary tricks, were tormenting. One can't be touched, and another can't even be seen. How do they even fight against that? "Haha, come and hit me, stupid." Han Huo was laughing and mocking the raiders while weaving crisscrossed through them. He would throw the raging balls of flames from his palms left and right, or perhaps spit fire at them, reducing the raiders' hair and clothes to dust. He had also been greeting their female relatives with foul language. I chut! Slash! An iced arrow that came out of nowhere suddenly landed on Han Huo's back. The arrow clearly came from a high god. The complacent and arrogant Han Huo suddenly stumbled. The ice-gold aura invading his body made him shiver. His mouth was too busy chattering to continue greeting the raiders with vulgarities. Chapter 821. From Bad to Worse, GDK 821. From bad to worse, it was after the iced arrow struck Han Huo that the shooter gradually revealed himself from a dark corner. He was thin and tall. He stood silently as he gazed at the injured Han Huo with his ice-gold and merciless eyes. The attacker's face was as flat a plank, where the outlines of his mouth and nose could not be seen. He was either incredibly ugly or he had disguised his facial features, as it did not appear normal. Fuck! It took a while before Han Huo recovered from the attack. Han Tu had stopped attacking the other enemies and started pulling Han Huo down under to the safety of the underground. The water energy cultivator that abruptly showed up possessed early-stage high god strength. Han Tu knew the gap in strength between mid-gods and high gods and therefore did not fight him. He immediately knew that it was time to flee. That woman is still up there. If it was any other mid-gods who suffered the attack, their divine body would have been shut down. Even if it doesn't kill them, they would be frozen still. But Han Huo was rather unique, as the fire lotus that covered his body was a treasure naturally formed in the place of extreme fire over hundreds of thousands of years. Over half of the assaulting, frigid divine energy was counteracted. Han Huo only needed to rest for a moment before his body resumed to normal. "We will wait for her," replied Han Tu as he completely pulled Han Huo into the earth. The two vanished from the raiders' sight. Then, while the raiders were loudly cursing as they looked for Han Tu and Han Huo, the duo stealthily popped their heads out in another region and shouted at Rose, who was battling in midair. "Oi, woman, let's go. Stop dawdling with them." Rose was distracted by their shouts. The balance was tipped and the high god of lightning gained the upper hand. Several snake-like thunderbolts crawled to Rose and bit her. It made her long hair stand up straight. The energy of Thunder Cultivator was in the same realm as Rose and slightly stronger than her. He had taken not just the high ground, but he also filled the space underneath Rose with meandering electric dragons, making it impossible for Rose to descend to the ground. At this moment, the other high god that recently joined the fight gave up on attacking Han Tu and Han Huo and shot towards Rose. This high god of water knew that it was unrealistic to kill Han Tu and Han Huo, who were hiding deep underground in a short time. Therefore, he decided to attack Rose, who could not fly to the ground. "What should we do?" Han Huo asked Han Tu anxiously when he saw that Rose was about to be surrounded by two high gods. "I also don't know. Should we save her?" Han Tu was much calmer than Han Huo, but just as indecisive. He knew that he and Han Huo could not defeat a high god. Although they could form a partial penta-elemental undead formation, Han Tu wasn't sure if they would have enough power to fight the high god and was worried that they would land themselves in greater danger. "Just run, leave me behind," shrieked Rose while Han Tu and Han Huo were being indecisive. A burst of white, icy gas suddenly shot towards Rose. As she was using all her strength and attention fighting that high god of thunder, she could not evade the attack. The icy gas landed directly on her back. "Fucking hell, I'll do it." Han Huo came to a decision immediately after hearing Rose's cry. Without asking for Han Tu's advice, he started screaming profanities and charged out from the hole. "You despicable asshole, is backstabbing all that you know. Fucking coward, come and fight me directly if you have the guts. Oi fucker." When Han Tu saw Han Huo flying out from the ground while cursing, he let out a sigh, emerged from the ground, and pursued Han Huo. It was the first time in the battle that he was not underground. Han Tu could flee without Rose, but he could not leave his brother behind. Therefore, when Han Huo decided to stay, Han Tu also stayed. Multiple mounds grew from the earth as Han Tu flew out from the ground. As he flew towards Han Huo, he shouted, "Little fire, get into formation." Han Huo stared distractedly for a split second before he started smirking evilly, as though he had just recalled that he could fuse his energy with Han Tu's. As the mounds lifted skywards, large flames flew towards them and miraculously entered them. The yellowish-brown mounds then suddenly started glowing and burning like a sphere of heated steel. The burning mounds flew to the water element cultivator ragingly. Only certain unique life forms nurtured with the 5 elemental yuan energy could combine their energies as Han Huo and Han Tu were doing. The yuan energy of earth and the yuan energy of fire fused together perfectly in the mounds. Not only that the mounds had become much tougher, they were constantly emanating an astonishing amount of heat. There was no way that the high god of water would be unscathed if he was struck by one of those mounds. "You are courting death," groaned the person coldly before he blew a stream of icy gas with his mouth. The icy gas assembled the element of water in the air and instantly formed a sparkling and translucent ice spear. The ice spear, emanating a great amount of frigid aura, shot towards the fiery mounds rapidly. I-ting, ting, ting. Slash-I, the sound of metals clashing reverberated from midair. The ice spear did not shatter the mounds, but only pushed them aside before continuing to shoot towards Han Huo and Han Tu. "Huh?" softly cried the water element cultivator. His eyes were glistening with the lights of puzzlement and surprise, as though he did not expect that his ice spear did not shatter the mounds. From his point of view, although the 2 mid-gods had strange divine energy, it should be impossible for them to even come close to blocking his attacks. He seemed to have become interested in Han Huo and Han Tu. Instead of targeting Rose, he turned to 2 brothers, gazed at them with his ice-gold eyes as he slowly marched towards the duo. As he stepped on empty air, he congealed multiple water dragons using the element of water in the air and sent them flying menacingly towards Han Huo and Han Tu. Han Tu utilized the energy of earth to form an earth wall, and Han Huo added his energy of fire into the wall to defend against the high god's attacks. They intended to distract the high god from Rose. Although this expert had just early-stage high god strength, he was, after all, a high god. Even when Han Tu and Han Huo joined their energies, it was still very strenuous and difficult to defend against his attacks. As though it couldn't get worse, the mid-god raiders made use of the opportunity to throw their divine weapons and other ranged attacks at their scorching earth wall. Han Tu and Han Huo were feeling strained and helpless. While they suffered the bombardment from all directions, the thought of escaping without Rose echoed louder in their minds. Unlike a few moments ago, the duo were now completely passive and were showing signs of weariness. The high god of water flew into a rage out of humiliation when his attacks had repeatedly failed to destroy the earth wall made by 2 mid-gods. He congealed several water dragons and ice spears, accumulated the power to its peak, and blasted everything at the earth wall. I-boom, slash-I, an enormous explosion sounded. The earth wall remained intact, but Han Tu and Han Huo were sent flying away. The earth wall was sustained by both of them, and the counteracting force of the earth wall was directly connected to the duo. The all-out attack of the high god proved to be too much for the two. The enormous force that entered their bodies sent them flying out from the back of the earth wall. "Run!" Rose knew that Han Tu and Han Huo stayed there for her. She couldn't help herself, but shouted when she saw that the two were in great danger. By now, the shop workers and pharmacists realized that something wasn't right. They came out from their rooms and gazed at the warehouse anxiously. Although it wasn't unusual to hear battling noises at night, it would always end within a short time. The screams and shouts would be coming from strangers. But on that night, they noticed that the battling noises were unusually long and loud. They even heard Rose scream twice. Knowing that things were going south, they stopped what they were doing and gazed at the battlefield. These shop workers and pharmacists had mediocre strengths. Besides, seeing that high gods were involved, they knew that there was nothing they could do to help. All that they could do was watch the battle anxiously. Han Tu and Han Huo tumbled and rolled uncontrollably. They were sent flying quite some distance apart. This meant that after touching the ground, Han Tu could not immediately get Han Huo under the earth's protection. The high god of water seemed to realize this and therefore, instead of attacking Han Tu, who could disappear underground in an instant, he went after Han Huo. The force that entered Han Huo sent him into a daze, and he had yet to come to his senses. He was still falling dizzily from the air. As soon as Han Tu touched the ground, he became conscious and immediately realized what was happening. He shouted, "Little fire, run, run!" I thud thud slash I Han Huo too had landed. He too had regained consciousness upon crashing onto the ground. He saw that the High God of Water was a short distance away, and Han Tu was very far away. As Han Huo could not submerge underground like Han Tu could, there was no way for him to avoid the High God's attack. Han Huo realized that he was in a terribly dire situation. "Run! Run!" shouted Han Tu as he ran towards Han Huo as fast as he could. Although he knew that Han Huo won't make it, he kept screaming at Han Huo to run because he was overwhelmed with fear. "Darn it, I'll get you. Even if I die, my father will avenge me." When Han Huo saw that he could not run, he decided he might as well put up a fight. He gathered all his anger and rage and valiantly charged at the High God. "Well then, die," shouted the High God Raider in a disdained smirk. Chapter 822, You Need to Be Stronger. GDK 822, You Need to Be Stronger. It was at this moment that an ear-piercing whistle sounded from the horizon. A 3-meter-long bone spear glowing with dazzling white light, carrying an overwhelming amount of the aura of death, streaked across the vast space and drew a spectacular arc in the sky. It was shooting towards that High God of Water. The High God Raider had just reached Han Huo. The disdain in his eyes had disappeared without a trace and replaced with great gravity. His pupils contracted as he fixed all his attention on the rapidly approaching bone spear. He also assembled all his water divine energy in his hands. As the bone spear was targeting him, he could sense better than anyone just how formidable the amount of the energy of death contained in the bone spear was. Other than the energy of death, the bone spear also contained an even more dreadful, sinister energy, reeking with killing intent. It was no weaker than the energy of death. The High God of Water had no choice but to use all his strength to defend against this dazzling white bone spear that suddenly appeared. He had no time to deal with Han Huo. His eyes staring fixedly at the bone spear, as all the water divine energy in his body was condensing on his 2 hands, while the element of water converged towards his palms. His white and long arms turned as sparkling and translucent as crystal, while emanating white, frigid mists. It was as though his arms had turned into ice in an instant. If one was to look from up close, one would see that in the center of his crystallized arms there were liquids slowly flowing. After attaining high godhood in the cultivation of the water element, one would have perfect mastery in using both the fluidness of water and the toughness of ice. The bizarreness of the Raider's hands was proof that his understanding of the water energy was in the realm of High God. Streams of frigid air started bursting out from the tips of his crystallized fingers. The frigid cold air streams converged and formed an ice shield in a fraction of a second. The fact that this High God Raider had immediately used defensive measures against this bone spear showed that he was afraid of it. Immediately after the ice shield formed, the bone spear arrived. I clang. I the bone spear made contact with the ice shield. A burst of splendid white light erupted from the point of contact. Countless small radiances crawled out towards every direction while making strange sparking noises. The High God Raider seemed to have been hit hard. His arms that were maintaining the ice shield were making loud cracking noises. He felt 2 forces wreaking havoc on his ice shield, clashing with his water divine energy hundreds of times in an instant. One of those forces was a death divine energy, which had broken down his water divine energy to bits. The other force was an unknown energy with intense killing intent, which penetrated his ice shield and into his hands as though it was self-aware. It was trying to penetrate further into his divine body. The High God of Water took a shock and immediately withdrew. He diverted his divine energy from his arms back to his body in an attempt to stop the assault of that vicious energy at all costs. In the split second of negligence, the sinister energy managed to cause tremendous damage to his divine body. By the time he diverted the water divine energy from his palm, the sinister energy had wrecked at least 30% of his organs. Had he hesitated for a few seconds, his body and soul would have been destroyed. Who is this newcomer? I wondered the High God had been just inches from death. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. He dared not do anything to Han Huo, who was within his reach, but turned his frightened eyes on the bone spear that had just shattered his ice shield. He was terrified. A youngster wearing an indifferent face walked out from a dark street silently. With one of his eyes light purple in color, he appeared very sinister. There were 7 slightly shorter bone spurs connected to his back. They were all glowing with soft white light. The teenager took just a few seconds to get to the center of the Celestial Pearl store from the dark street. He extended his arm forward, and the bone spear instantly flew back into his grasp. Without wasting a single word, he flew towards that high god raider who tried to kill Han Huo. His purple eyes suddenly started to glow. The element of death gathered under the rider's feet and formed an enormous, bewitching flower made of bone spikes. Its petals closed and trapped the raider firmly from the waist down. His bright red blood squirted out from his body and tainted the spotlessly white bone spikes. The 3-meter-long bone spur was hurled. It drew another beautiful curve from the sky to the top of the raider's head. The bone spur punctured his skull, through his spine, and out from the bottom, pinning him straight to the enormous bone flower. He could not fight back from start to finish. The cold and emotionless teenager closed his fingers, and the bone flower immediately flew to him. He stepped forward, grasped tightly on the 3-meter-long bone spear, and pulled it out from the raider's cap. His brain matter mixed with blood and mushy organs sprayed out from the hole on his skull. A grayish gas also emerged from the body at the same time, trying hard to fly away. However, the teenager grabbed it with his left hand and threw it to one of the 7 bone spurs on his back. That bone spur seemed to have some kind of suction power, and it vacuumed the grayish glob of gas. The bone spur glow with a gentle halation for a moment before the light faded. The bewitching and enormous bone flower started falling apart and miraculously vanished into thin air. That lifeless body whose soul had been captured fell spinelessly to the ground. All of that happened in just a short few seconds. That domineering high god raider died before the shop workers and pharmacists of puny strengths came to their senses. The high god of thunder who was battling Rose showed shock and horror in his eyes. His movement speed had substantially reduced and was no longer attacking Rose as fiercely. It seemed as though he was deciding if he should escape. The enormous pressure on Rose was reduced. She found the time to take a quick glance at the emotionless teenager, and she too was greatly astonished. Who is this person? Is he a friend or a foe? What should I do if he's a foe? To be able to kill that early-stage high god raider in such a short time, the teenager should possess at least mid-stage high god strength. Rose had great difficulty dealing with the high god of thunder, and knew that she would stand no chance if this sinister-looking teenager was to also fight her. The onlooking shop workers and pharmacists were also wearing astonished faces, wondering if this high god that just joined the fight was a friend or another raider of a different faction. If it was the latter, they knew that they would all die in that shop that night. When everybody had their gazes on the teenager, Han Huo suddenly cried out in a pleasantly surprised manner, "Eldest brother. You have come, elder brother, when have you come?" Han Tu, who had finally reached Han Huo, asked the teenager excitedly in a foolish smile. Just now. The teenager, who had been ice-cold and emotionless all along, put on a very faint but sincere smile. He looked at Han Huo and Han Tu and berated in a neutral tone, "You fellas have not been working hard. You are too weak." "We have been working very hard, It's just that elder brother ended up being much stronger," said Han Huo, while he scratched his head embarrassingly. Then, in a fawning tone, he said, "Brother, it's so fortunate that you have come just in time. Otherwise, I'll definitely have been done for. That is why you need to be stronger," replied Han Hao before he glanced at the Midgod raiders around him who were thinking about escaping. The bone spurs on his back abruptly whooshed out. The bone spurs made noises that sounded as though thousands of tormented spirits were wailing as they shot all around. Bone-chilling winds suddenly blew in the shop and miserable shrieks were heard. All those masked Midgods were shredded into pieces. When the 7 bone spurs killed all Midgod raiders, the high god of thunder that fought Rose no longer hesitated and decisively left. While flying away, for some reason, he would repeatedly turn